ProjectAD.me.com has some of the best supplements around. You guys know that I've supported Project AD from the beginning. They've supported Beast Fitness Radio from the beginning. Joe Binley over there has a whole team of just amazing guys. If you go to their website, you can actually check out and see their entire health line, which includes a fiber product, an actual greens and reds product, a heart and liver and kidney based products. We have an actual one of the best glucose disposal agents on the market, if not the best. We have Aminotor, which is essentially essentially a branched-chain amino acid product. We have Nitrox, which is more of a pump-based formula. We have Raging Full, which is going to be your intra-workout carbohydrates, but also can be used in a peri-workout setting. There is things for digestion, there's things for energy, there's things for fat loss. Overall, Project AD has everything you need. Use coupon code BFR25 at checkout to save you guys some money and obviously to support this podcast and support Joe Binley. Mike Arnold has been nice enough to come on Beast Fitness Radio weekly, do Q&As, do topic videos, and so because of that, and because he actually does help sponsor this podcast as well, we want to show him some support. Check out maresearchchems.com, coupon code ALEX15, and masubs.com for code ALEX20. Over at MA Research Chems, those are all HPLC tested peptides, SARMs, all that kind of good stuff. And over at masubs.com, he has more of his specialty-based supplements. Guys, please go support him. You're supporting the show, you're supporting me, you're supporting Mike Arnold. All good guys. Thank you so much. Enjoy the episode. What's up, everyone? Online Prep Coach Alex here with PrepCoach.com, back with another episode of Beast Fitness Radio. This week is crazy busy, so I do not believe that me and Mike Arnold are going to be able to record. And this might be a shorter episode than you're used to, but I feel like it's something that I haven't addressed in podcast form. I know I've made multiple Instagram posts and I've written many articles on this, but it's something that was really taught to me a lot by Dr. Andy Galpin. He was a guest on the podcast a while back, and in terms of hypertrophy research and overall fiber type research, he is the go-to guy for this kind of information. He's one of the smartest guys that I've learned from, so I want to make sure that credit's given where credit's due. And then you start combining this kind of information and some of the knowledge and the research that Dr. Andy Galpin and his team are doing, and you start seeing it in terms of the actual application sense of things. Because you guys know that as much as I love my literature and I love my research and knowing the base amount of knowledge, we still need to have some kind of application. You can't just have everything done in a lab and not have any carryover to the real world. I mean, let's look at competitive bodybuilders and competitive elite strongmen, for example, and competitive elite, or not strongmen, elite powerlifters, for example. There's not going to be a study where the people are going to be having their nutrition as down pat as someone who's been bodybuilding or powerlifting for 20 years. The drug protocol is going to be completely different if there is a drug protocol. For a lot of people, it is going to be there, but then even for the natural side of things, this has even more validity and carryover, so you guys can understand the difference between strength and hypertrophy adaptations. And there is a lot of crossover. I don't claim to be an expert on this, but I at least do know my way around the conversation. So I wanted to go ahead and talk about that. Strength versus hypertrophy adaptations. So generally, we're looking at kind of 5 different aspects of the two. Now, we'll start off with strength because there is some intermingling and intertwining. We do know that volume is a big regulator in hypertrophy, and you guys know my stance on that. Before we can go any forward, I should kind of clarify my stance. The whole progressive tension overload that Lyle McDonough has been talking about for, 30, 40 years. A lot of the Dante Trudell, a lot of the, I've learned from a lot of different people that have a lot of different aspects. And to me, you should always be, first of all, your effort needs to always be there. So if you're stopping an exercise or a set, a working set, we'll say shy, 2 to 3 reps shy of failure. Beyond that, if you're stopping things like 4, 5, 6, 7 reps shy of failure, you're really not doing anything from an effort aspect. You need to have effort there. There needs to be enough effort in every set. Another thing that goes without saying is you need to have the prerequisites in order. So you need to be able to contract and fully shorten and fully lengthen a muscle. Just the basic neurological adaptations that come from training and training properly need to be in place. After all that is done, you should be doing as much volume as you can handle with the proper amount of intensity and the proper amount of frequency, because this is all going to play off of each other. So I'm not the person that says, hey, everyone should do high volume training, because high volume is going to be relative. I'm not the person that's going to say everyone should do high intensity training, because intensity is relative. Whether you're talking about load on the bar, or whether you're talking about how close to failure you're going. Again, there's a lot of different people that describe things different ways. And that's all going to be determined by your frequency, which is going to be biologically dependent. So depending on how you respond, your version of high volume may be different than my version of high volume. My version of high intensity may be different than your version of high intensity. For myself, the way that I prefer to train and the way that I truly love training, and for myself, the way that I've grown the most has been from taking every set to failure or about one rep shy of failure and working within a number of working sets that I know I can still recover and grow from. Not so much that I'm going to dig myself into a ditch and never be able to recover and grow out of. Because remember, as much as we need to tear down fibers in the gym, we need to be quote unquote catabolic for that time period. If we're not able to ever recover from that, you're never going to go anywhere. You're never going to be able to give your body that stress adaptation response, and you're just going to be walking in place. And that's what a lot of people do. So for myself, my quads might be anywhere from 10 to 12 working sets per week, and I'm taking every set to failure. Again, we are talking about actual mechanical failure. We are not talking about, doing forced reps and strip sets and supersets, and then, making sure you're convulsing and you're cheating your way up. No, these are actual strict repetitions. These are taking things until I literally cannot do another good rep with proper form. And whenever you can really reach that level of, we'll say, failure, that's whenever I've seen a lot of people, especially in the enhanced community, grow those high velocity contractions with heavy weight using, we'll say, in the moderate rep range. So all the stuff that Dante Trudell preached, I have found that myself and a fair amount of people, if not everyone, respond very well to that, because no matter what, over time, you need to have a progressive approach. Whether you're adding load to the bar or adding volume in some other way of sets, of reps, of load, of whatever it is, there needs to be that progression built in. So I'm in neither camp. The volume needs to be adequate, and it needs to match your intensity, and the intensity needs to be adequate to match your frequency, and the frequency needs to be adequate in order to match your own biological needs. So that's where I stand with it. I'm not team DC. I'm not team Mike Israetel with the I'm really no team, because they're all right. Everyone just says things a little bit of a different way, and I've worked with way too many people now to see that, gender differences, we look at ethnicity differences, we look at drug usage or non-drug usage, and everything changes the equation. So everyone's going to respond, and they're going to need their own biological differences, or they're going to need their own biological needs met. And then from there, that's whenever we get into these things, after you find out what your volume, what your intensity, and what your frequency is needed for yourself. Now, going into what we're talking about, we have strength adaptations first, and then we will cover hypertrophy adaptations. And we're doing that because sometimes you can get stronger without getting bigger. And again, a lot of this was from Dr. Andy Galpin. So Dr. Andy, thank you so much, guys. Google his name, support him, check out what he has to offer. He can go in depth far more better than I can on this subject, but I can at least do my own justice with it. So with strength adaptations, we have a lot of neurological components first and foremost. We have the fact that, like I said, muscle fibers basically muscles in general can get stronger without actually getting bigger. And then we have things like your connective tissue and your fascia that all play a role in promoting more strength adaptations, so increasing your ability to put out maximal poundages. Now, one of the big things we have to remember is those neurological adaptations. Generally, those neurological adaptations in the short term are generally a result of your body getting more proficient at doing what it's being trained to do. So we have things like motor units firing in a more synchronized pattern. We have your approved ability to recruit motor units. We have, and again, these are all elicited by electrical stimulation. You get better at doing things that you're doing. So if you just started high bar squatting for the first time, the chances that you're going to have to rotate that may be very slim for an extended period of time to start hitting a lot of plateaus. Then maybe adding in a front squat or a Smith machine squat or hack squat or different variations. There's a million different ways you can do it, but generally, and this does change the more experienced you are, the stronger you are. There's a lot of other things you have to look out for. Myself, for example, I have been high bar squatting for the past 7 or 8 months, and I haven't had to take a break. I haven't had to rotate that from any other squat pattern because I just kept getting bigger off of it. And remember, hypertrophy is my main goal. So yeah, the strength was continuing to increase in a linear progression as my size was as well. And the cool thing with that was, again, if you can work in that moderate rep range, and that's why we're talking about fiber type transformation in the second part, where muscles can get stronger without getting bigger. If you're doing singles, doubles, and triples, you're going to get more neurologically adapted to doing singles, doubles, and triples. This is where Dr. Andy comes in, where he starts talking about fiber type transformation, where you start talking about ion sensitivity, you start talking about all of these different things that can make you stronger in the gym without necessarily getting bigger. That's why we have the caveat of working in a moderate rep range, because if you're getting stronger in a moderate rep range, that's progressive tension overload. That's progression over time in a rep range that's going to be a little more conducive to working more from a fiber type aspect than on just a neurological aspect. And no matter what neurological adaptations are going to happen, you can't get around that. I mean, if we didn't have any neurological adaptation, our brain wouldn't learn to fire, wouldn't learn to do new movements. So that's all very important. And then, like I said, you do have things like your connective tissue and fascia that get stronger under those heavier loads, and they get better. And so therefore you have a quote unquote reinforced, we'll say tissue, ligament, connective tissue complex that now can handle these loads, and you can therefore push more strength. So we have those three things for strength adaptations. When we look at hypertrophy adaptations, we have hypertrophy and hyperplasia. So hypertrophy being the increase in the diameter of a muscle cell, and then hyperplasia being the addition of individual muscle fibers. A lot of people will you say hyperplasia and they say doesn't exist in the literature, this, that, and the other. I have seen too much actual anecdotal evidence. I have talked with people like Dr. Andy, who are far smarter than I am on this subject, and there is something going on in terms of our potential ability to add individual muscle fibers. Now, we're going to leave hyperplasia out of it because, again, that still hasn't been technically 1000% proven, but we know that generally the bro science people that have been in the gym, in the trenches doing this stuff, usually find out things before the researchers do. Look at a lot of the literature going back to Dante. He was doing rest pause sets, and now there was a study that just came out a couple years ago that's showing that rest pause sets may have greater potentials for hypertrophic adaptations and growth potentials. So generally, it's the people that are doing these that form the hypothesis and say, you know what, this makes sense from what I've seen. Now let's actually find it out in a study. So hyperplasia still has to be very well researched, but I do believe, and I will hang my hat on the fact that something's going on there that we do not know. So looking at specifically increasing the diameter of a muscle cell, I want to make sure that everyone's on the same page with this, because this is very important to at least to make sure you guys understand the adaptation process as a whole. So whenever we're looking at a muscle cell, first of all, we do have 1 myosin to 6 actin, so that's basically going to be surrounding it, and that 6-to-1 ratio is pretty unique to humans. Again, going back to Andy Galpin, they've done a lot of research on different animals and their different ratios, and that's a little bit above my head, but it's some really interesting stuff if you want to go read that. And essentially how it works, how our muscle fibers are contracting, is that myosin basically grab the actin, pull them together, shorten the length of the muscle of those microfilaments, stack on top of each other, and then the muscle actually gets larger. So remember, when we are hypertrophying, whenever we are causing an increase in size, the body actually increases myosin protein. We're not going to actually be growing new actin and myosin. We just make our current ones a little bit thicker. And once they get so thick, that entire diameter of the cell has to get larger, so the spacing between the myosin and actin can be in proportion. Our body, as a human, does not want to have 2 myosin to 6 actin. That's not the way it works. It has to be a 6-to-1 ratio of actin to myosin. So because of that, remember, we are increasing our myosin protein. And that is essentially how we contract, how we build muscle fiber, and how we cause muscle cell hypertrophy. So as you can tell, there's going to need to be a higher amount of, we'll say, fiber type stress going on from the hypertrophy side of things, wherever, if you're looking at the two of them, strength versus hypertrophy, there needs to be that stressor on the cell and the fibers themselves for you to make the cell bigger, for you to cause that whole actin-myosin equation that we talked about to actually happen and to actually increase our myosin protein. Whereas with strength adaptations, you can get stronger just from a neurological efficiency type of approach. So that is where we also have the fact that we get better at what we do. Our body can start actually transforming fiber types in the ones that we're using and not needing the ones that we don't need. And this is the big discrepancy between the two. This is why everyone always argues about, oh, is strength important for hypertrophy? Because hypertrophy is predominantly volume driven. Yes and no. The literature says that, but it's only, I feel like the people that are only debating this are the ones that don't really understand common sense and keeping things in context. And what I mean by that is exactly what I said in the beginning. My whole stance on strength versus hypertrophy, and my whole stance on volume versus intensity versus frequency. you need to fit the prescription to what you specifically need, to what your body biologically responds well to. So your amount of volume, intensity, and frequency should always be pushing the envelope if your goal is to maximize strength adaptations or hypertrophy adaptations. Once you find that limit of what you need to push, then you start recognizing, okay, am I trying to go more for size or am I trying to go more for strength? And then if you're going more for strength, well, you can focus more on neurological adaptations. You can slowly transform your fiber types. You can slowly increase your ion sensitivity. Your connective tissue and fascia will get stronger. Or if you're someone who's trying to increase hypertrophy in size, then you can start actually stressing the muscle cell itself. So like I said, whenever that since we're not growing new actin and myosin, we're just making the current ones thicker. We can get it so thick that the diameter of that whole cell has to get larger so the spacing can be in proportion, and therefore we have a bigger muscle cell. And that's just going to change the prescription of what you're writing for yourself. So have your overall goal, look at what you personally want, look at what you personally need, look at how you personally respond to, and then fill in the blanks with what your body actually requires. It's literally that simple. And I hope this kind of gives you guys a better understanding of strength adaptations versus hypertrophy adaptations and how to go about actually writing your own prescription. So, as always, thank you guys so much for listening. Check out theprepcoach.com. See you guys next time.